So first we shall discuss about the differences between the Selenium tool and then QTP tool. So initially if you are attending with the interviews, there may be chances with the, when they'll be asking about what is the difference between the Selenium tool and then QTP tool. Okay. So generally they'll be asking what is the reason you are preferring with the Selenium tool, what are the features we are having in this tool. Okay. Now if you look into those things, generally previously most of the clients have been started working with the QTP tool on the channel. So that means when you're working with this QTP tool, okay, if you compare the Selenium with the QTP tool, right, what are the features we are having in the Selenium? Right? Now if we come to this, we have seen some basic features like, if we come to this Selenium, it is an open source tool which we already discussed, and then coming to this QTP, it is a paid tool. Right? So because of this open source tool, if you want to work with this open source tool, no need to spend any budget, right? Directly you can download from the Google, then you can start work on this tool. Right? But if you are working with the QTP tool, means we need to spend some budget and then we need to start work on this tool. Okay. And then if we come to the Selenium tool, Selenium will be the, which it will be supported by the multi operating systems, right? It will be supported by Windows operating system, and then it will be supported by Linux and then Solaris. But if you come to the QTP, whereas QTP will be supported only for Windows operating system only here. It doesn't support for the Linux. And then if you come to the browser support, when you're working with the Selenium tool, which will be having as a multi-browser support, right? That means this Selenium will be supported by IE browser and then Firefox and then Safari and Opera. Whatever the general browsers we are having, each and every browser will be supported by the Selenium tool. But if you are working with the QTP, means QTP will be supported by only for Firefox and then IE only. And then if we come to the programming language support, so if we come to this programming language support, when you're working with the Selenium tool, which will be having as an option called as it will be supported by Java and then C# and then Ruby, Python, Perl, PHP. Okay, so which will be supported by the multiple programming languages here. But whereas if you're working with this QTP tool, means it will be supported by VB only here. Okay. So up to this, these are all the general features which will be discussed already. I mean differences between the Selenium tool and then QTP tool. Okay. Now if we come to these actual things, which we need to discuss about what is meant by HTML. We have a ID and the next part and then CSS and then DOM and then linked text. What exactly mean by this ID and the next part? Okay. Now whenever you are working with the any of the automation tool, okay, take with the web application. So for example, if you take a web application, what we need to do, if you want to perform any actions, first we need to identify that particular object here. For example, here I am having as a text box which I need to identify this text box. Nothing but I need to type some value here. Okay. Or else I am having as a button, I need to click on this button here. Okay. Now what we need to do here, we need to recognize with the object. How we need to recognize these objects here. Okay. So take a general example. If you take with the general example, for example, we need to recognize one person. Okay. How will be recognizing the person? Will be recognize the person with the name. Right? We'll be calling any person with the name only. For example, sometimes what will happen, we'll be having a same name for the two persons. Right? So at that time what we'll be doing, we'll be calling with the by adding some first name or last name. In that case also, if the person having the same first name and the same last name, what we'll be doing, we'll try to add some surname here, right? So we'll try to have, by adding any single difference, we'll make you some unique name here. Right? Similar way, if you apply with the same logic, when you're working with the Selenium also, for recognizing an object or for identifying an object, which will be having as a different options here. Okay. So what are all the options we are having in the Selenium tool here is, which will be having as a ID and name and XPath and then CSS and then DOM and then linked text. Okay. So these are all the different options which are available in the Selenium tool here. Okay. What is the purpose of all these options is, these are all the options which will be used for identifying an object here. Okay. Now whenever you are working with the Selenium tool, if you are working with the Selenium IDE or if you are working with the Selenium RC or if you are working with the WebDriver. Okay. If you are working with any of the component from the Selenium tool, for identifying with the object, you will be working with only these options. Okay. Other than this, we don't have any other options here. Okay. But the same thing, if you come to this QTP, okay, when you're working with the QTP, in QTP, which will be having as a object property concept is there here. Okay, in the QTP, by default, we'll be having as a built-in object repository. But if we come to the Selenium tool, we don't have any built-in option here. Okay, which we need to do, everything we need to do it manually only here. Okay, that which will be having as a this purpose of the ID, name, expand, down, and then CSS. Okay, now up to this is fine. Okay, now come to the next step, which will be having is a one tool called as a Firebug. What is meant by Firebug? Okay, now in the previous step, what we are telling here, we are telling that we need to identify the particular object by using any of those options. That is fine. Now what we are telling here, we need to identify this text box by using ID. That means we need to identify what is the ID of this text box, right? Or else we need to identify what is the name of this text box. Okay. How we can get what is the name or what is the ID of this text box? Okay. How we'll be getting that information is for identifying that what is the name of a particular object or what is the ID of that particular object, which will be taking with the help of tool called as a Firebug. Okay. What is the purpose of Firebug tool is by using this Firebug tool, which you can identify what is the ID or what is the XPath or CSS and then DOM or linked text of particular object. Okay. So that is the purpose of which will be working with the tool called as a Firebug. Okay. The same thing when you're working with the QTP, in QTP we'll be having as a GUI spike, but in Selenium we don't have that option, which will be taken with the option called as a Firebug tool. Okay, that is about what is the purpose of the tool called as a Firebug. Next, come to the recording concept. When you're working with the Selenium tool, in the Selenium tool we don't have any recording types here. Okay, which will be having as a general recording only. I mean, when you're working with this QTP, if you check with the QTP, in QTP which will be having as a will be having as a different type of recording modes will be available here. Okay, which will be having as a high level recording and then low level recording and then general recording. But if you come to this Selenium tool, we don't have any recording types, which will be having as a normal level recording only here. Okay, and then at the next step, if you check with the installation. Okay, when you're working with the Selenium tool will be taking very less space for installation here. But if you check with the QTP it will need around some 1.5 GB or it will need more than that space here. Okay. And then finally, if we come to the last one, if we check with the support. Okay. So support means generally whenever you are working with any of the tools, we need some help, right? If you compare this Selenium tool with the QTP is a licensed tool, right? So because of that, we'll be having as a more support on the QTP team. But if we check with this Selenium is an open source tool, right? When you compare this QTP, we'll be having as a less support only. But nowadays, each and every information is available in the Google here. If you search in the Google, everything is available related to the Selenium tool. Apart from this, we'll be having some official sites also, like we have this Castle Lab and then Element 34 and then commercial support. Okay. So these are also some official sites we'll be having, which will be getting the help from the Selenium group. Which will be getting some help from the Selenium sites. Okay. So this is the basic difference between the Selenium tool and then QTP tool here. Okay, so generally if you are attending with the interviews, there may be a chance where they can ask you, can you compare the Selenium tool with any of other tools? Then we need to compare with the QTP. Most of the time we'll be comparing with QTP, and then we have to clearly explain them what are the features we are having in the Selenium tool, and then what are the reasons we come to the working with the Selenium tool. Okay. So now which will come to the history of the Selenium here. Okay. Now coming to this history of the Selenium, already we discussed this. This Selenium has been came into the market in the 2004 itself. Okay. At that time, initially there is a team called as a Johnson Haggis team. This has been working on the Selenium development here. Okay. After that, this company called as the ThirdWorks, this has been working on the development of the Selenium, and then now presently the Google team is working on the development here, because most of the development will be done by the Google team only. This is an open source tool, right? Because of this is an open source tool, everyone can contribute further on the coding here. Even once we get the confidence on the tool, once we are able to write, once we are able to support any information to the Selenium, we can also support some information on the tool here. Okay, because this is an open source tool, everyone can provide information for developing with this tool here. Okay. No, this most of the coding part will be done by the Google team only. So presently this Google team is working on this development. Okay. And then already we told that it is a pure 100% web application tool only. So Selenium will be it's a purely 100% web application tool here. Okay. Which will be having as a support for working with the multi operating systems and then multi browsers here. Okay, that's the basic information. Okay. Now come to the Selenium components. So the Selenium components, which we told that the first one which will be having as a Selenium IDE. IDE means which will be calling as a integrated development environment. So what is the purpose of Selenium IDE? Selenium IDE which will be used for record and playback here. Okay, what you can do is which we can record your script and then we can play back your script. Okay, other than that we cannot do anything here. Okay. Now eventually which we are working with is the Selenium IDE only. But once you on the Selenium IDE, once you record your test scripts, once you play back your script, it doesn't generate any test results. That is a drawback we are having here. Okay. So to overcome that drawback, these people have been introduced one more component into the market that which will be calling as a Selenium core here. Okay. So what is meant by Selenium core here? Okay. So Selenium core is nothing but which will be used for generating with the test results. Okay. So we have a tool called as a Selenium core, which will be used for generating with the test results here. That means what we'll be doing is all the test scripts will be developing in the Selenium IDE itself. After that, you'll be creating one test suite. Okay. So test suite is nothing but the group of test cases will be calling as a one test suite. We'll be creating with the test suite, and then third test suite which will be running with the Selenium core. What Selenium core will be doing is it will be running your suite and then it will be generating one HTML report. Only that will be the purpose of working with the Selenium core. Okay. And then when you're working with the Selenium IDE, which you're having some more drawbacks here. What are the drawbacks we are having is when you're working with the Selenium IDE, we cannot work with the conditions or loops or parameterizations. That means which we don't have much support for doing with the programming here. Okay. Because of this, these people have been introduced one more component into the market that which will be calling as a Selenium RC here. Okay. So Selenium RC means which will be calling as a remote control. So now when you working with the Selenium RC, which they have given a support for working with the programming language here. Okay, that means which you can do the programming because of we have a support for the programming, we can work with the loops, conditions, parameterization, everything will be possible in the Selenium RC. Okay. But only the thing we need to remember is when you're working with the Selenium RC, you'll be having is a two components that is called as a server and then client. Okay. What is meant by server and then client we'll discuss in the future classes. As of now, assume that when you're working with the Selenium RC, you'll be having is a two components that is called as a server and then client. Whenever we are writing any program in the Selenium RC, what we need to do, which we need to write a code for starting your server and then we need to write a code for starting your client. Okay. So once the program is completed, then we need to write a code for stopping your server and then for stopping the client here. That means whenever you are working with the Selenium RC, every time you have to take care about for working, for starting with the server and then starting the client and then for stopping the server and then stopping the client. So this became a headache for the user for every time taking care of these two components. Okay. To avoid these headache, these people have been introduced one more component into the market that which will be calling as a Selenium 2.0, which we can call as a Selenium 2.0 or we can call as a web driver here or we can call as advanced Selenium. Okay, if we come to this Selenium RC, we'll be calling as a 1.0. If we come to this web driver, which will be calling as a Selenium 2.0. Okay. So these will be the functional components which are available from the Selenium core. Okay. Now apart from this, which will be having is another component also, which will be calling as a Selenium grid here. Okay. So Selenium grid, it will be acting as a performance tool. That means we cannot say that totally it will be acting as a performance tool. By using Selenium grid, what you can do is whatever the test scripts you have been developed by using Selenium RC or WebDriver, the same test script which you can run with the multiple browsers. Okay, for running with the multiple browsers, simultaneously it will be executing your test script with multiple browsers. So for that purpose, which you can work with the Selenium group here. So these are all the components which are available from the Selenium group here. Now first which will get started with the Selenium IDE here. Okay, now before going to with Selenium IDE in detail, first we will discuss what are the advantages and the disadvantages we have. Now if we come to these advantages, okay, the advantages will be the general thing we'll be telling. It's very easy to use. That means for working with the Selenium tool, it will be very easy to use here. Okay, and then we are telling that it's just a plugin for the Firefox browser. Okay, so this step it should be very clear. Initially, we are telling that Selenium will be supported by all the browsers. Okay, it's absolutely perfect. It will support all the browsers. But particularly if you are working with the Selenium IDE which will be supported only for the Firefox browser only. Okay, it doesn't support for all the browsers. Okay, but when you're working with the Selenium RC or WebDriver, those two components will be supported by all the browsers. Okay, so whenever you're telling any information in the interviews, you should be very clear here, because the Selenium IDE will be the plugin for the Firefox browser. You can install the Selenium IDE and only the Firefox browser. In another browsers, you cannot install the Selenium IDE. Okay, so that is the reason which will be calling as a Selenium IDE will be the plugin for the Firefox browser. Okay, and then coming to this next step, which will be this Selenium tool will be the very useful for the beginners. Okay, that means if you're starting learning with the tool, this will help you very lot to learning with the Selenium tool. Okay, and then when you're working with this Selenium IDE, which will be having this option called as a record and playback. That means you can record your script and then you can play back your script. Okay, and then which will be having as a drop down option. Drop down option means once you install your Selenium IDE, in the Selenium IDE you will be having as a drop down. In the drop down, which it will be giving the list of all the Selenium commands. So in the tool, whatever the commands are available, it will be giving the list of all the Selenium commands here. Okay, and then by default it will be recording in HTML code. So once you are recording your test script, by default it will be recording in HTML mode only. After that, if you want to export to any other programming languages, you can export to other programming languages also. So we have a feature, once you record in one language, you can export to the another languages also. These are all the advantages which you'll be having in the Selenium tool. Okay, now come to the disadvantages. So if we come to these disadvantages, we cannot say that all this will be the disadvantages. Okay, we'll be telling as a Selenium IDE does not directly support here. Okay, it should be clear on this point. Initially, we'll be telling that the Selenium IDE doesn't support conditions, loops, parameterization, all things. This is perfectly right. Okay, by default in Selenium, you don't have any option for working with the conditions or loops or parameterization and any other features. But if user want to work with the Selenium IDE with all these options, that will be possible here. Okay, how it will be possible means, whenever you are working with the Selenium IDE, if you want to add any of the feature to the Selenium IDE, we need to add some external JavaScript files. Okay, if you are adding any of the JavaScript files to the Selenium IDE, and then those features will be available in the IDE also. For example, when you're working with the Selenium IDE, by default we don't have any option for working with the conditions. Okay, but you want to work with the conditions. Then what you can do is, which you can add some extra JavaScript files to the IDE, which will help you to work with the conditions. Okay, then at that time, Selenium IDE also will be able to work with the conditions. Then you want to work with the loops, then add the JavaScript file which is related to the loops. Then IDE also will be able to work with the loops here. That means by default, whatever the feature is not supported by the Selenium tool. Okay, whatever the feature is not supported by the Selenium tool, if you want to make that feature should be available in the Selenium IDE, you can make that. Okay, because of this, we cannot say that the Selenium IDE totally doesn't support conditions or loops or anything. By default, we don't have that options. Okay, but if user want to enable those options, we can do that here. How it will be possible means by adding some extra JavaScript files. Okay, so this which will be having as a advantages and then disadvantages about the tool. Okay, now next step coming to the installation part. How we need to install with this Selenium IDE here. Okay. So for the installation related to the Selenium tool, each and every information will be available in the website called as a seleniumhq.org. Okay, so this will be the official site related to the Selenium tool. Every information will be available in this website only related to the releases and then related to the softwares. Each and every information is available in this website only. Okay, first you can open this website. After that, click on this download. Okay, so once you click on this download, it will be opening with the download page. Okay, now here you can observe here which will be having this option called as a Selenium IDE. Okay. Here in the Selenium IDE, we'll be having as a download latest release. So latest one will be the 2.2. It has been released recently. It has been released in the 6th July. Okay. What you can do is just you can click on this. Okay. Once you click on this, if you're opening this URL in the Firefox browser, okay. If you're opening with this URL in the Firefox browser, automatically it will be asking you to allow. Just you can click on this. If you click on this allow button, it will install it. Okay. Otherwise, okay, if you are opening this URL in any other browser, okay, for example, if you are opening this URL in Google Chrome or if you are opening in IA browser, we need to save that plugin here. Okay, I'll show you that how the plugin will be. Okay, just an example, I'll show you that plugin. So if you come to this, okay. Now we say which will be having is a selenium-id.xpi here. Okay. If you have downloaded to your local system, how we need to install it? Just we have to drag it and then drop it in the Firefox browser. Once you drop it to the Firefox browser, you can drop it anywhere. Okay. Once you drop it, automatically it will be asking for install. Okay. Once you click on the now install button, it will be installed. Okay, its installation will be very easy. What you have to do is, first step will be the open this website seleniumhq.org and then click on this download tab. After that, click on this link. Okay, then automatically it will be installed. Okay, so once you have been installed with the Selenium IDE, now we need to open the Selenium IDE tool, right? So how we need to open this? For that, you need to go to the tools and then options here. Based on your Firefox version, you need to go to this option here. The basics thing which we need to remember initially is whenever you are installing the Selenium IDE, if you are working with the latest Firefox version. Okay, if you are working with the latest Firefox version, which you have to install with the latest version IDE here. If you are working with the lower version Firefox, then you have to install with the lower version IDE. Only that is the information you have to check it out. Okay. Now, once you install with the Selenium IDE, we need to open the Selenium IDE, right? So for that, you can go to this tools or options. Otherwise, you can go to this Firefox, which will be having this option called as a web developer. Okay. Under this, which will be having this option called as a Selenium IDE, which you need to click on this Selenium IDE. Okay. So when you'll be getting that Selenium IDE option means once you install your Selenium IDE, then only you'll be getting that option. Okay. So otherwise you will not be having that option. Okay. Now this is the UI how the Selenium IDE tool will be working. Okay. Now here you can observe this by default, which will be having is the recording on and off button here. Once you open your Selenium IDE, by default it will be in a recording mode on. If you want to make it as an off, just you can click on it, then it will be going to the offline mode. Again, if you want to make it as an on, click on that, it will be coming to the online. Once you click it, it will be going to the offline here, which will be calling as a on and off button. Okay. Now come to the file. Once you come to the file, which will be having this option for creating the new test case. If you want to create the new test case, you can create a new test case. Open. If you have an existing test case, you can open it and then save test cases. And then we told that initially we told that once you record your script, you can export to another languages, right? So for that we have the option here, which will be having as a export test cases. Okay. Now you can export to any of the programming language here, which you can export to the C# or Java or Python or Ruby. So whatever the programming language you want to, you are interested, you can export that to that programming language here. Okay. So above all these options will be the related to the test case. Okay. And then below one, which will be related to the test suite here. We told that when you're working with the Selenium code, we need to create with the test suite, right? So for creating with the test suite, which will be using all these options here. You can create with the new test suite, which you can create with the open test suite, and then you can save the test suite, and then we can export to the test suite also. What is meant by suite here? Suite is nothing but the adding the group of test cases will be calling as a one suite here, right? So group of test cases means we need to add the test cases, right? How we need to add the test cases for the suite is here we have a option called as the add test case. Now if we check with this option, okay, which will be having this option called as the add test case. By using this option, whatever the test cases you want to add to the suite, you can add all those test cases here. Okay, so that about the options. Okay. And then we'll be having as a edit. No, we cannot use here. So we don't have any option for working with the Excel sheet. When you're working with the Selenium IDE, we don't have that option. But when you're working with the Selenium RC or WebDriver, we have the option for working with the Excel sheet. Now, after that, which will be having is a edit. Okay, if you come to this edit, this will be the general thing, which will be having is a cut, copy, paste, or edit here. And then we'll be having as actions. So actions means whether you need to record your script or stop. This will be the general thing. And then after that, come to the options. If you come to these options, which will be having as a options here. Again, you can click on this submenu options. Okay. So once you click on this submenu options, which will be having as a 30,000 here. What is meant by this 30,000 here is 30,000 will be the default timeout for the Selenium tool. Whenever you are working with the Selenium tool, this 30,000 milliseconds, it will be the milliseconds here. It is a default timeout for the Selenium tool. Okay. What is the purpose of this is, for example, take up any of the web application. Okay. Now this is the web application we are having. Now what we need to do, which we need to tap the username, tap the password, after that we need to click on the login button. Okay. If you click on this login button, it will take some time for loading the page, right? So how much time it will wait for loading the pages, which will be waiting for the 30,000 milliseconds. If the page has been loaded within that time, then it will be moving to the next step. If the page has not been loaded within this time, then it will be giving the error as a timeout error, and then it will exit from the application. Okay. So that is the purpose of which will be having as a timeout. And then next step which will be having is a user-extension.js. We told that if any of the feature is not supported by the Selenium tool, we need to add some external JavaScript file, right? So here we'll be having this option for adding with the external JavaScript files, okay, which we can add with the external JavaScript files. Okay, so that is the option which will be having as a adding with the extra for adding with the JavaScript file. Okay. And then after that, coming to the next option, which will be having as a remember base URL and then record absolute URL. Okay, what is meant by this base URL and then absolute URL here? Okay. So coming to this base URL, for example, taken a web application. Now, for example, we'll be taking this application only. Now, what is the website address I'm giving? Which I'm giving as a seleniumhq.org. This will be the website address. Okay. Up to this is fine. Now if you observe, I'll be clicking on this tab called as a projects. Now you can observe here what is the change you are observing. Up to this org, it is a constant only. It has been added called as a projects. After that, I'll be clicking on the download. Now if you see, after this org, it is a constant only. That it has been taken with it. The download has been changed. Then I'll be clicking on the documentation. Just only this part has been changed. Now if you observe here, if you take with the any of the website, some part will be the constant only. Okay. Whatever the constant part is there, that part which will be calling as a base URL. That means up to this part will be calling as a base URL. What is meant by base URL is, base URL is the nothing but which is having the constant one here. Okay. After base URL, whatever the remaining is mentioned, that will be calling as a remaining URL. Okay, remaining URL means which is dynamically changing. And then combining with the both the things, which will be calling as the absolute URL. Absolute URL means total, whatever the URL you are having, the total that URL will be calling as the absolute URL. Okay, So don't confuse about this base URL and an absolute URL. We doesn't have any problem here. If you're having any confusions, whenever we are working with the applications, just you can take with the total URL. It doesn't have any problem. Okay. Just for understanding with the syntax purpose, we need to look into the information what is meant by base URL and then what is meant by absolute URL and then remaining URL. Okay. So that is the purpose of which will be having is the options of this here. Okay. Next, which will be having is option called as a start recording immediately and open here. Okay. So what is meant by this? Once you make this checkbox as a on. Okay. So by default, whenever you are opening your Selenium IDE, by default it will be coming in a recording mode over here. Okay. If you are making that checkbox as a off, what will happen is by default your Selenium IDE will be open with the offline mode here. Only that is the difference here. Okay. So that which will be having is the options. Okay. And then coming to this help will be the general thing. If you want to get any help from the Selenium tool, which you can get that help here. Okay. That about the what are all the options we are having. Okay. Now come to the next line, which will be having as a fast and slow. Okay. This fast and slow, which you can control with the execution of your program. That means whenever you playback your test script, whether you want to run with the fast mode or if you want to run with the slow mode, we can control with the execution of the speed here. Okay. And then this will be the button which will be used for play for suit. Okay. The first button which will be used for the play for suit, and then second will be the play for test case. Okay. If you want to play with the test case, which you can use the test case. If you want to play with the suit, which you can use with the suit here. Okay. And then this third one will be the which will be the stop button. So by default it will be in a disable mode only. Whenever you are recording, whenever you play back your test script, then at that time it will be getting enabled here. Okay. And then this will be the step button, which will be for the debugging purpose. Okay, that means generally if you click on this play button, what will happen? Whatever the test script you have written, it will be executing all the things. Okay. But if you want to debug your code step by step, then which will be working with the button called as a step button. Okay. And then which will be having as a this is a test case name. So whatever the test case name you are giving, that will be displayed here. And then which will be having as a table tab and then source tab here. Okay. So table tab will be the which will be writing the code in a table format. Whatever the code you are writing in this table format, automatically that will be converted into a source code here. Okay, we will not be writing any source code here. Whatever the information you are mentioning in this table format, automatically that will be converted into a source code, and then those source code will be generated here. Okay, that which will be having is a table and then source tab. Okay, now after this, which will be having is a command and then target and then value. Okay, which will be having as a 3 columns. If you observe, the same 3 columns will be having here also, which will be having as a command and then target and then value. By default, these 3 text boxes will be in a disable mode only here. When it will be getting enabled means you have to click on this line. Okay, so once you click on this line, then your command button and then this target button and then value button will be enabled. Okay. Now we told that when you're working with this Selenium IDE, you will be having as a drop down, right? So here you will be having as a drop down. Once you click on this drop down, which it will be giving the list of all the Selenium commands. Okay, in this Selenium tool, whatever the commands are available, it will be giving the list of all the Selenium commands. Now, whenever you are working with the Selenium tool, which we need to work with only these commands. Okay, apart from these commands, we cannot work with any other commands here. Okay, that which will be having as a command here. And then here it will be giving the test case, how many has been run and then how many has been failed here. Okay. After that, it will be having as a tab called as a log, and then it will be having as a reference. Okay, log means once you run your script, it will be generating with the log history. If you come to the reference, it is like a help here. That means this is a drop down, right? From this command drop down, select any command. Whatever the command you are selecting, for that command it will be giving the syntax and then it will be giving the description of that particular command here. What is the syntax of that command and then what is the purpose of that command here. Okay, you can select with the other commands also, whatever the command you are selecting. So from this drop down, whatever the command you are selecting, it will be giving the syntax of that particular command here. That means whenever you are working with this Selenium tool, if you want to get any information that what are the commands are available and then what is the syntax of that command, then you can come to this drop down, you can select that command and then it will be suggesting you what is the syntax of that command, and then what is the purpose of that command. Okay, that which will be working with the about long and the reference. Okay, so we never work with these two things. There is no use of working with these two things. Okay. Now, for now, this what we'll do is we'll see how we need to record and then how we need to play back it here. Okay, so first what we need to do, which we need to go to this file, take with the new test case, which will be taking with the new test case. Okay, now come to this application. Okay, now come to this Selenium IDE. What I'll be doing, I'm making as a recording will be the on. Okay, so once I make it the recording as a on, now I'll be coming to this web application. What I'm doing here, I'm typing with the username and then I'm typing with the password. Now if you observe here, whatever the actions you are performing in the browser, each and every step will be automatically generating with the recording here. Now if you see, it has been typing with the username and then it has been typing with the password. So whatever the actions you have performed in the browser, automatically it will be generating the code related to that. Now what I'll be doing, I'll be clicking on the login button. Okay. So once I click on this login button, after that I'll be clicking on the logout. Okay, then I'll be come to the Selenium IDE, which I'll be clicking on the stop button. Okay, now recording concept has been completed. Okay, now what I'll be doing is I need to play back it, right? So for playbacking the test case, I'll be opening with the new browser. Okay, now which we need to remember here is whenever we are working with the Selenium IDE, we need to open the browser. Okay, but when you're working with the Selenium RC or WebDriver, in that we can write with the code for opening the new browser, but particularly when you working with the Selenium IDE, which we need to open with the new browser. Okay, now once you open with the browser, you can run your test case. So initially, make a practice run in a slow mode only. Once you get the confidence on the tool, after that you can run in a fast mode. Now what I need to do, which I'll be clicking on this play button. Now you can observe here, once I click on this play button, it will open an application. It will be typing with the username. It will type the password. It will click on submit button and then it will be doing with the logout. Now automatically the log will be generated in this log tab here. Now I'll click on play button. Now we see it is opening an application, typing with the username, typing with the password, clicking on login button and then clicking on the logout. Okay, everything has been executed. Now how will be confirming that all the steps have been executed or not is we can see this color coding. At the same time, which you can check with this log information. Now we see open command has been executed, typing username, typing password, click on submit button and then click the logout. Okay, so this how we need to do with the recording concept. Okay, so recording will be the very easy. You can take with any of the application. For the practice purpose, what you can do is you can take with any of the web application, make it as a recording mode will be the on. You can perform all the actions, automatically it will be generating with the code. Okay, but for working with this tool, the main thing which we need to understand here is what is meant by command, what is meant by target, and then what is meant by value. Okay, so once you get the clarification on these three components, what exactly mean by command and then target and then value, then you can easily work with the Selenium tool. Because all the total Selenium tool, either Selenium IDE or Selenium RC or WebDriver, which it will be working based on these three columns. Okay. Now which will be having as a command and then target and then value. Okay. So when for learning with the tool, what you can do is just you can take with any of the web application, you can make with the recording, then you can observe here command, what is the command it was taken. Now what we done here, we type with the username. So for typing the username, what is the command it has been taken, which it has been taken with the command called as a type. That means which you need to understand, okay, for typing some value in the text box, we need to work with the command called as a type. For clicking on the button, which you have a command called as a click or click and wait here. Okay, this is the way how we need to learn with the tool here. By this way, we can easily learn with the tool here. The main thing is, whenever you want to do with the automation, what we need to do here, by seeing the manual test case steps, which we need to get an idea, okay, for performing this test case step in the Selenium we have this command. Okay, so once you are getting that confidence, then you can easily work with the tool here. Okay, that which we need to learn with what exactly mean by command and then target and then value. Okay, so from this part which will start tomorrow. So tomorrow we'll start with the actual how we need to do with the program. That means how we need to write this code in a table format. As of now, just we've done with the record and playback, right? So record and playback will be the general thing. But before writing with the actual test cases, which we need to understand what is meant by command, and then what is meant by target, and then what is meant by value. Okay. So tomorrow we'll take some manual test case related to these applications. Okay. And then we'll start converting those manual test cases into the automation testing. Okay. So up to now, if you have a time, what you can do is I'll be sending with the credentials for this application. You can practice with the same application also, and at the same time I'll be sending this PDF file to all your mail IDs. Okay, you can go through this PDF file also. So in this PDF file, everything I have documented. So till now, what are the things we'll be discussing, and then in the future, what are the concepts we'll be discussing. Everything I have documented in this PDF file. Once the class session has been completed, just you can go through this PDF file. By this, you'll be getting an idea of what are the concepts we discussed. Okay. So till now, any clarifications? Anyone having any clarifications or any doubts? Everything is clear, right? Okay. Solid. So tomorrow we'll meet you at the same timings only. Okay. So today is the first class, so we have a problem with the delay with the starting the class. But from tomorrow we'll be starting the sharp 9:30. All right. Thanks everyone.